I've been thinking a lot recently about our influences. We've all had influences guide us at some point. Decades of guidance from our parents, maybe a momentary insight from visitors. I'm at a point in my career where I find myself surrounded by people I find inspirational. An activist from Mexico, an artist from New York City, a philosopher from Holland. I'd like to share with you more about their inspirations. But first, I'd like to go back a bit to my initial inspirations, 19th century explorers. When I was a teenager, I copied journeys by way of Xerox, and I provided myself with light tones and dark tones. And from this palette of maps, I would create portraits of the explorers who gave us these maps. David Livingstone, North Pole explorer Commander Peary, South Pole explorer Robert Falcon Scott. In total, I had 8 explorers, and when my undergraduate show came down, they all folded up neatly and fit in the glove compartment of my VW microbus. It was the power of the person and the pathways they took that drew me in. And so I have to talk about 2 more people, 2 pioneers from this earlier era before I move on. Scientists Georges-Charles Guion and Jean-Alexandre Barré. In 1916, they diagnosed 2 soldiers who had similar key syndromes involving albucytological dissociation. Let me explain to you what that means by way of my own experiences. Years ago, I was talking to someone and I had trouble snapping my fingers. I couldn't produce enough grip strength to create tension, to create a snap and strike my fingers against each other. So if you'll do this with me, I'm going to count 3. 1, 2, 3, and we'll snap 3 times as loud as you can. 1, 2, 3. Now once, see if you can do that softly without making a sound. That sensation is the sensation I had at maximum strength. And the next day, I had that same sensation in my legs. I couldn't walk. Well, the next step was to be taken to the emergency room. I had Guillain-Barré syndrome. What happens in Guillain-Barré syndrome is your brain is trying to communicate signals to your major muscle groups, but because of an inflammation in neural tissue, the signals don't come quite through, and you have diminished function. I was becoming paralyzed, in essence. First, your limbs go, and then the muscles around your lungs, and ultimately the heart. Now, I plateaued before getting to that spot. And in fact, after 5 days of being in the emergency room, I was declared good enough to be an outpatient. And I could go home for the next few months. I remember when I got out of that hospital, stepping down the steps, and I just remember bending down and clutching grass and ripping it out of the ground. And the feeling of those blades of grass going through my fingers was an incredible feeling. And I realized right then that to be able to grip something, to be able to grasp or grab anything, an object, I knew that if I could grab an object and if I could grab an opportunity, and I had just gotten out of the hospital, so I could do anything. Things are different now. I knew that I could make some impact in the world, on some level, some small level at first, perhaps. So this became my determination. The doctors did say that the more I pushed myself, the speedier my recovery would be. So I decided to enter a Frisbee golf competition. After all, I've been a professional at the time for a quarter of a century. So I know that I can throw a Frisbee 400 feet, and then I know I could measure my rate of improvement. Now in the tournament, I could let go at sort of a strategic time, but it wasn't really throwing. It wasn't really like, as we say in the industry, I couldn't grip it and rip it. So it taught me a lot about what I can't do and what I can do. I decided that I would embark on working with medical institutions to make artwork about my experiences. I worked with prosthetics and orthotic centers. I worked with bio-nano engineering centers. And through a lot of research and collaboration, I mounted a solo exhibition in New York called Cloning, Zoning, and the Shared Tiara. And of all 27 works that spoke about body ability and enhancement, I'm just going to share with you two. One that involves an arm and an armadillo, and one that involves a curious skeleton. The armadillo, who only gives birth to quadruplets every single time, references cloning. It also fits in nicely with an armor-like constructed arm I made for a work discussing Henrietta Lacks, whose cells founded an immortal line of cells that are found all over. This armor-like constructed arm, curiously durable, was so secret that I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement just to use. In fact, I literally had to wear a black bag over my head when they drove me to the lab. The delicate yin to this durable yang was a sweet-smelling chocolate skeleton that referenced how precious our selves are, but also at the same time nodded to the fact that one day our very bones might be constructed, ordered, and sold in vending machines. Now, the entire show spoke of the science, but it didn't speak of the scientists, and I grew to be more intrigued by highlighting and celebrating personalities. And as fate would have it, I was invited to mount an exhibition that was a retrospective of the original 19th century explorers. And as luck would have it, at the opening, right on my phone, I showed someone next to me a brand new body of work that I was working on. It turned out that they loved the work, and they offered me to reproduce one of these works on a scale of 130 feet wide on the side of a building, a mural. This is what led me to local resident and international sensation Peiju Shen Pot. The preliminary shoot proved that mere documentary of this mural as she was jumping in the air should quickly go to something more dynamic and distinct. I knew that I was in the presence of true genius. So I popped my camera off of the tripod and I quickly moved in and I started taking portraits of her as she was dancing. It was as if I was dancing with her because I had to get that close and I was firing away. This dovetailed nicely with a side project that I was working on that was now coming to the fore, where I was highlighting individuals who I find inspiring by direct portraiture and handheld objects. These are some of the inspirations I spoke of at the top. I photographed a teenage activist who Good Morning America covered for her work with the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Educators Network. I photographed a career illustrator whose original colored pencil drawing of the Pegasus is seen all over the entertainment industry. I photographed nationally syndicated radio show program hosts. I photographed internationally recognized artists and filmmakers and philosophers and craftspeople. And I photographed former tallest teen girl in the world. People whose presence and voice and actions positively impacted the world. Now, I've been in green rooms and I've been in gray rooms. And I've been working with people who have worked in the Oval Office and corner offices. And people from different backgrounds and different ethnicities and different origins all seem to tell me the same story. At least I feel there's a thread of consistency in their stories, where it seems that anyone from any age, any size, and in any skin, if they can grab an object, any object, and they can grab an opportunity and have an idea and have a passion, then they can make a change and impact in a positive way in the world. I've seen it happen, this seed of greatness. As a portraitist, I've seen it in the eyes of people that have dedicated their lives to realizing successfully their dreams and goals. And as an educator, I've seen it in the spark of a young student who just realized something brand new. It can happen with anyone, and it can happen as quickly as this. Thank you.